Hello, I'm Cassey, and this is my reflection on my writer's craft lesson. I have the questions here on my laptop so that I can refer to them quickly. Here's my reflection. So the first thing says, what was it like to think about differentiated instruction prior to the lesson? Was it challenging to think about accommodating students with special needs and to consider diversity, equity, and inclusion? So the answer to this is always and forever for me going to be yes. I even talked with my field instructor about this during my formal observation for my lesson plan. I struggle with differentiation. I really do. I understand that it's an important thing. We have to use it in the classroom and think about it when we're creating lesson plans, but it's hard for me. It is definitely not my strong suit when it comes to lesson planning, and I think you also noticed that when you gave me feedback on my rough draft, that it's never there. So it's because it's hard for me. It's very, very hard for me to do. I think what makes it so hard for me is I am afraid of creating an unfair differentiation, if that makes sense. Obviously, we should continue to challenge our students at the same level as it deems appropriate, and we shouldn't make certain tasks easier for certain students. So I struggle with where does that easier versus making it doable come into play. I did struggle. It was hard, and it was something I thoroughly had to think about. So what are some challenges that you had in the lesson planning process? So other than that, I feel very confident in my lesson planning process. I know what needs to be done, and I know how I need to get there. I tend for that to be a very strong suit of mine, and I don't mean that in a very, with a big head. It just comes easy for me. So I guess what was easy for me was just knowing. So I didn't have any challenges, I guess, other than differentiation, but I already talked all about that. So I guess what was easy for me was just doing it. I understand what needs to happen in the mini lesson. I understand what needs to happen in active engagement. I understand what needs to happen in group work and just individual work time, and I understand what needs to happen in the closing. So that is very natural for me when it comes to filling out a lesson plan template. So how did the lesson go? So my lesson was about personification. I'm in a first grade classroom, and we have been working a lot on small moment stories, narrowing in on that watermelon seed. You got the whole watermelon, but focusing in on that one small detail. What can you really draw from? And so one of the things my students have learned to do is make their story come to life. So giving the characters in their story dialogue, or not just writing. The slide was big. It was fun. Now I'm home. So learning how to use their words to describe why the slide was fun, why was it big, what colors was it, for us to feel like we were there. So I taught a lesson on personification, and we read a book, and in the book the dog talked. The whole book was about a dog and how he learned to read, and so at the end of it we discussed how do dogs really talk? No. Well, yeah, they do talk, but do they use words? No, they don't use human words. They use dog words. They bark. It's a first grade classroom, so you never know what you're going to get in response to any question you ever ask. That we read the story. We talked about this dog coming to life and how that was personification. I broke down the word personification and how in it there's the word person, and there's also the word fication, which we've learned the word fictions and nonfiction books. So I broke down that, this is when we're giving fake fiction, fake characters, fake things, the ability to do human things. So letting animals, in this particular case, be able to talk with human words and feel human things and solve human problems, like learning how to read. The lesson overall went, I feel, pretty well. With first graders, there's not necessarily a lot of product at the end, and I know we've talked a lot about the process. So because we were so focused on the process of, okay, so this is how we can make our animals talk in our story. So first, let's think about an animal. Okay, you're going to do a lizard because you have a pet lizard. Okay, so how could your lizard come to life? Well, he might wake up and tell you, I don't like this food. I want a different kind of food to eat. This does not taste good. I don't like this. Give me something else. Or, hey, human, it's time for you to clean my cage because it's a little dirty in here. So, just like working through that with students and like helping them, like, okay, so not every story has to have a dog that's learning how to read. Let's like pull from our brain, pull from animals we know, animals we have at home or we've seen or our family has, to pull on those kinds of resources. So we began writing, I think 2 of my gifted students finished, they called it finished their work. And I guess at the end they really did have a story with an animal in it that was doing human things. So I guess, as with any lesson, more time would be awesome, but I feel confident that my students, by the time they went back to their desks and were writing, and I or my mentor teacher came around to conference with them, they were feeling confident about how to use personification in their writing. So what didn't go well, so that was what went well. What didn't go well, the timing, I ran out of time. The students ran out of time. They were like, can we please finish? Can we please finish? And of course, we have lunch, and you know, when the lunch ladies say it's time for lunch, it's time for lunch. So, I mean, but I was very surprised at how many wanted to keep going with writing, because that's not usually something that happens in my classroom. So I was very pleased by the response to the lesson that I gave. What was your aha moment? Let's see. An aha moment for me was that this isn't as easy as we think it is. I am on the daily in the 1st grade saying, okay, I'm 21 years old and that's why I get this. These kids are 6. They've never been exposed to this, so it's okay that they don't understand. So my aha moment was probably, I probably should have like listed on the board some animals that they could have used in their stories and their narrative writing about these animals, but I didn't, because I didn't think that would be a problem. I thought they could like come up with their own animals in their head. So that was probably one of my biggest aha moments. Like, I really do have to almost, like, I have to do every step for them first before they're going to be able to go back to their seat and do it. Some things that stood out to me were, like I said, it really stood out to me how engaged my students were in this lesson and how they wanted to, like, continue with this lesson. And they were like, do we really have to go? Because they're always, we all know students, always, yes, time for lunch, recess, activities, woo! But they were like, dang, I really want to keep writing, Miss Gerry, can I please? I'm like, we'll pick it up, later. So that really stood out to me there, like true engagement in this lesson. How did I feel after the lesson ended, and what gave me this feeling? I felt proud of my students. I was very proud of the things they were able to comprehend and what they went back to their desk and did. A lot of times I think we as teachers have this like unintentional thing we do where we just assume they can't. But they can. They really, really can. So I felt proud of my students. I felt proud of myself. I felt like I delivered it in a way that I was like, okay, that was good. I broke that down. They got it. So I was proud. I was very proud. So how did this project help me become a better teacher? I had to reflect a lot on my differentiation. And of course, a lot of that is thanks to you for the feedback you gave. But I also learned, I pointed out earlier in the video, that I literally have to do this step by step with them first for them to get it. So this has helped me become a better teacher by just me realizing, like, okay, no shortcuts with the 1st grade, no shortcuts with these kids because they've never learned these things. No shortcuts, just do it for them first so they can truly see it, and you'll save yourself a lot of time in the long run. You're not going to have to go to every single student and like look at every single paper to make sure they don't have a dog reading in their story, So what are some practices that you would carry on into your future teaching? I guess everything that I did. I feel great about the way, like I said, overall, other than like listing the animals on the board, I feel like I did really well presenting this lesson to my students. They did a really good job being receptive to my lesson, and thinking that it was fun. So what are some practices I would modify for my future teaching? How and why? So I would modify the presentation, making it longer, literally drawing it out, and literally doing it for my students. Why? Because they need it. They do. And like I often have to put myself back in the 1st grade and be like, okay, This is literally the first time they're learning this. With all the subjects, math especially, I'm like, okay, this is the first time they're learning how to add and subtract. Calm down, Cassey. It's fine that they don't get it, So, yeah, modifying, I definitely would modify my lesson in the sense that I need to learn how to do a step-by-step, because I'm just going to save myself more time in the long run by doing, like, literally explicitly showing and telling them how to do it versus just assuming that they can do it and sending them back to their seats with it. So what are some practices that I would never do again? I don't really think that there's anything that I would never do again. One thing that I would modify, I guess I should go back to the previous question, would be presenting more than one mentor text. So more than just a story about a dog learning how to read for these students, but not necessarily nothing that I can't think of anything that I would necessarily never do again, because I feel very confident in where I am. I feel I get a lot of positive feedback from my mentor teacher. My formal lesson plan, my TA gave me all 5s on that. I truly, in the most humble way and least big-headed way possible, I feel very confident in where I am right now as a future educator and my ability to lesson plan and then present my lesson. So I'm not perfect. I obviously have a lot of things that I still need to work on, but nonetheless, I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of my students, and I cannot wait to continue on this journey with my writers, my students, my awesome first graders.